Welcome back to the JAKIB Media pregame show here from Ocean Casino's incredible gallery, bar, book, and games. We welcome in alongside Derek Gunn and Seth Joyner, Mark Farzetta, and our friend John McMullen in the flesh, ladies and gentlemen, hanging out with us here at Atlantic City Ocean Casino. John, how are you, man?
Late change, but I'm happy to see you guys.
Good to see you, man.
Called the audible on the travel, and here you are.
Yeah, I won't say who called the audible because I don't want to destroy them. I want to destroy them, but I won't. But it's good to see you.
Very good, very good, very good. All right, we're looking ahead to this Eagles season. We're looking ahead to Eagles Patriots, obviously at 4:25 here this afternoon, John. But when it comes to this Eagles season overall, I want to ask you about that whole Super Bowl hangover thing that people seem to be somewhat concerned about outside the Philadelphia area. If you had to sell somebody on the idea of the Eagles not going through a Super Bowl hangover, how would you sell them?
They got more talent than just about everybody else. So I think ultimately, and this guy can probably talk about it better than Ben, if you got the better players, you might struggle at times, but you're going to out-talent teams. And I think that's the advantage the Philadelphia Eagles have. I do think there is something to Super Bowl hangovers. I do think there's a human nature aspect of being pushed off the top of the mountain at the very last second when you thought you were going to win the football game. I think that's difficult to overcome at times, guys, but they have so many veteran leaders on this team, starting with Jason Kelsey and the core four. We know Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Lane Johnson, but also Jalen Hurts. You know, Jeffrey Lurie called him the most mature 24-year-old he's ever met, including his son, who's going to take over this team. He's not that anymore, but only because the calendar turned. Now he's the most mature 25-year-old. So they have leaders. They have everything in place to make another run at this thing. But the last part you need is a little bit of luck because they were healthy last year. And they'll start this year healthy. There's only so much you can do when it comes to legislating injuries. And I don't know if they're going to have that same kind of injury luck 2 years in a row.
So John, how do you decipher the unknown commodity that is Sean Desai? You've been there, training camp, preseason games. How do you decipher? What do you feel good about, or what makes you still have some reservations about it?
Well, I don't like the scheme. I think too many people play the same scheme in the NFL, and then it becomes who plays it best. And I think that was the Eagles last year, right up until they didn't in the second half of the Super Bowl. And they're going to play the same scheme, the same philosophy. What I think Sean Desai is better than Jonathan Gannon at is branding. I think he's smart. He understands the city, whether it's his time at Temple or whatever you want to attribute it to. He understands you have to play up to a certain something in this city. He uses the term palatable all the time. Yeah. And people are like, yeah, let's do that. It's going to be the same scheme. It's going to be the same Vic Fangio scheme. It's based on sort of, I always say, here's how I describe it, guys. +1 on offense. We all talk about that with Jalen Hurts in the running game. +1 on defense, the Vic Fangio scheme. That extra defenders in coverage, not supporting the run. That's what they want. They want the light fronts. They'll give up the 5 to 6 yard runs at times. But even Sean has said it multiple times this spring and summer. Limit explosive plays, limit explosive plays. That's goal number 1 with the Philadelphia Eagles.
You know, I'm not overly concerned about, especially the offense. I think the defense, John, may take a little time to find their footing, but by week 5 or 6, I think they take off. My greatest concern in this football team right now is Michael Clay and the special teams. You got a punter, you know, that you put on the practice squad. You cut him, nobody else wanted him. You put him on the practice squad, and you've been working out all these punters all this time. So now he's an early activation as of yesterday, and it's like the confidence level for this guy has got to be at an all-time low. They were terrible on punt coverage. They were terrible on kickoff coverage last year, and all of last year's actors are right back here again with some key guys missing from the special teams from last year. How do they fix this? or is Nick Sirianni just saying this is my guy and we're going to ride with it until we get it right?
Well, as far as Aaron goes, and I think I'll give a shout out to D. Gunn. He was the first one who said the Eagles were going to move on from Aaron Cepas. But bang, after D. Gunn said that, we got immediately,
Exactly.
whoa, wait, he's probably going to be back. But the Eagles were playing the roster game because there's been so many changes. So they knew Aaron Cepas would get through waivers. They kind of knew. It's a calculated gamble. We're at the Ocean Casino, Gallery Sportsbook, calculated gambling. But they kind of knew it, and they wanted to save young players like Eli Ricks and Mario Goodrich, who they knew weren't going to dress early in the season.
Right.
And they're inactive, as you've already seen today. And they're like, we can get Cepas and we can get Covey through waivers, put him on the practice squad, elevate him for 3 weeks, then you got to make a decision. And maybe that decision is made for you by injuries, right? Maybe you have an open roster spot and everything works out itself. Or you got to make a more difficult decision. But you bought yourself 3 weeks. So I think that's the classic Howie Roseman savvy way of handling things. They're very comfortable with Aaron Cepas as the holder for Jake Elliott. While people go, yeah, I know. And I asked Michael Clay, but guess what? Go back to the preseason, guys.
Yeah.
Jake Elliott missed one field goal.
Right.
It was with Ty Zettner as the holder. And guess what? It was a perfect hold.
Yeah.
But you know kickers, that
Psychologically.
they get stuff in their head.
Yeah.
And he's banging through 59-yarders with Aaron Cepas holding. So you have one of the best kickers. Now, ultimately, he's got to punt the football better. I don't think anybody is going to disagree with that. I will say, though, I think the Eagles did Aaron a disservice in the Super Bowl. He had not punted for 7-8 weeks.
They should have never activated him. I
Yeah,
agree.
exactly. They should have let Brett Kern. It wasn't great, but he's going to kick the ball the right way. And then to your point, Seth, about the coverage teams, they'll tell you, look, they stunk last year. So maybe the athleticism of Sidney Brown, he's going to be a punt gunner to start. Maybe the athleticism of Kaylee Ringo, maybe that improves them on coverage. But, yeah, special teams on paper does not look great.
One short follow-up. And you may know, you may not know. Why haven't the Eagles taken a look at Matt Araiza, the kid that was drafted by Buffalo that had the accusations against him that he was then exonerated? I mean,
you know talent versus tolerance, Seth, and he's a punter. You know, and it's not just the Eagles. He had a workout with
the Jets.
With the Jets, yeah. He had a workout with the Jets and nobody else. Nobody invited him to camp. So it's not just the Eagles. If you were a quarterback, you'd get another opportunity. No question about it. But as a punter, people look at it and say, is it worth it?
Yeah, but he was exonerated. I mean,
But he still has a civil suit out there.
So what does the civil suit do?
Well, obviously, you know what it tells me?
Yeah.
That the league knows something that they're not telling yet. Because all 32 teams have not touched him. And when I asked the Eagles, when I put out there that Cepas was being cut, the first thing I asked is, are you going to bring in Araiza to try out? Emphatically, they said, nope. And I followed up and I said, why? We're just not interested. That was the comeback. So the league knows something that we don't know about what's going on with this young man.
I would like to know because the kid, kicked the 80-yard punt before.
Yes.
I mean, the Bills don't move up and draft him where they draft him if there's not some talent there.
Right.
And as hard as it is to find a guy, who can consistently kick the football, I was dealing with this, on my podcast just last week. I said there has to be something underlying that we're missing. That a kid what round was it they drafted? Was it like the 4th round or something like that? I mean, you don't draft a punter that early and then all of a sudden he can't punt anymore.
No, he can punt. But as you said, and he was exonerated. What happened was the district attorney out there declined to move forward because they didn't think they could prove the allegations. However, in the information they did uncover, there was still some untoward stuff going on that Matt admitted to.
Wow.
Girl was underage, but it was consensual. A lot of people don't want to get involved with that.
Right.
So it's not just about being exonerated from a legal perspective, as D-Gun pointed out. You have a civil case on the horizon. A lot of teams just don't want to deal with that, especially in sort of the 2023.
Listen, I get it, but you know what? Deshaun Jackson had a civil case going, and the Cleveland Browns turned around and gave him $230 million guaranteed.
Yes.
Okay.
Quarterback, though. Quarterback versus punter.
No, I get it.
I mean, bottom line.
The only reason I thought the Eagles might take a flyer on Ariza is because you go back to when they brought in Michael Vick. Nobody wanted to touch Michael Vick after what he went through.
Yeah.
And Jeffrey Lurie and Andy Reid did all their due diligence of Michael Vick. They knew it would be a major distraction coming in here. They knew there would be a faction of people that would be outside of the stadium and outside of NovaCare protesting, bringing Michael Vick here. Sure enough, it was. But they felt that Michael Vick deserved a second chance. He paid his debt to society, and they gave him a second chance, and Michael Vick took advantage of it. That's why I equated to this Ariza thing. He's been cleared, but that civil suit is hovering out there, and then you couple it with some of the things that you're saying. Everybody's washing their hands of this young man.
Yeah.
He probably has the strongest leg. Now, you said nobody spends that high of a draft pick on a punter. Patriots just did it. This year, they spent a fourth round on this kid, Chad Ryland, who beats out Nick Folk, who they trade to Tennessee, and then they spent a sixth round pick on a kicker, which you don't do.
They care about special teams.
Yes,
I mean, that's one thing we're going to talk about in this game. Because the Patriots probably have a top 10 defense, top 10 special teams unit, bad offense. Eagles have a great offense, good defense, probably bad special team unit to your point on paper. But I would say, Jeffrey Lurie is famous for giving people second chances.
Yes.
You either believe in second chances or you don't. Right. But the part that factors in, again, quarterback, different. Wide receiver, Riley Cooper, that was untoward. They gave him a second chance. Deshaun Jackson, that was untoward. They gave him a second chance. Punter, they're just, it's a devalued position.
Even offensive line. If you look at Sills, giving him a second chance, giving him another opportunity as well.
That's better. Good call by you, because that was recent.
Every once in a while. But I am now convinced more than ever the Eagles are winning the Super Bowl. If we're that concerned about the punter position, that means everywhere else is pretty locked up. But no, in all seriousness, John, we're looking at this particular matchup when it comes to the Patriots. Is there something that if you're Bill O'Brien, for instance, and you're looking at this Eagles defense, what are you trying to exploit right out of the gate?
Right up the middle with my tight ends, because I don't have a lot. Ramondre Stevenson, who was sick this week too, so who knows if he's 100%, he's going to play. But they have good tight ends, and the Eagles, we're talking about Nakobe Dean, who I have a lot of confidence in, but we don't know. Played 34 snaps. He was great at Georgia, but he's undersized. We have to see how that works out. Zach Cunningham was a good player. How much is left in the tank? Reed Blankenship, same thing. Ton of excitement about him. Had a great summer, but not a large sample size. And then that second safety position, I think it's going to be Justin Evans. We're going to see. I don't know if some of the people there, they might know already. Terrell Edmonds, I don't think it's going to be Sidney Brown. He's going to have that big impact on the special teams. So I go right up the middle with those tight ends and try to stress that group.
So we talked about it earlier, John, and the Eagles ranked 17th against the run last year. They gave up 121 yards, and they really struggled once Jordan Davis went down, being able to stop the run, specifically in their four-man front. I mean, the times when the Eagles go four-man front, you'll probably see it more likely on first down, maybe third down. If I'm Bill O'Brien, I'm thinking when they get in their four-man front, let's see if they fix their problems that they had last year. Because when they had problems in their four-man front, they immediately went to the five, whether Jordan Davis was up or whether they had to bring in Linval Joseph or Ndamukong Suh.
Yeah, and that's part of the philosophy I was talking about, Seth. Look, they want to give up something in the run game to limit those explosive plays. That's just the philosophy of the Vic Fangio scheme. So they're willing to give up that occasional 6-7 yard run as long as they limit those explosive plays. I don't like it at all the times. But that's their philosophy, and they were successful. When you're coming off a season where you were the second-ranked defense, the number 1 pass defense, 70 sacks, you're not going to change a lot. And the only thing they changed, the coordinator, because he got a head coaching job, guys left in free agency, so you have some personnel changes. But the philosophy, and by the way, more than Jonathan Gannon, Sean Desai, that's Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni said, look, this is the defense that gives me the most problems. So I want you to play this defense. That's where it all stems from.
Well, I'll say this, before I toss it back over here to Mark, it's not a problem until it becomes a problem. And in the Super Bowl, it became a problem and they had no answer for it. And there's always going to be that situation where you play that team that has that number or creates that set of issues and problems for you. The thing I feel better about with Sean Desai is he's, in my opinion, will be a little bit better at being able to adjust on the fly than Jonathan Gannon was. Jonathan had no answer whatsoever.
Well, I will say this about the Super Bowl. If I asked you guys before the game, we're going to give up 182 passing yards, whatever it was, to Patrick Mahomes, would you have taken that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Every time.
And they gave up 14 points non-defensively. They gave up the fumble, the unforced error, and then the Kadarius Toney punt return. Now, you start at the 5, you can say, well, the defense got to step up, but as you know, Seth, that's on the special teams.
Right.
So they lost the football game by 3 points. They gave up 14 points. That wasn't defense, from my perspective.
Yeah, but when you need the defense to step up, when you really needed them, I mean, that's a part of the game. That's why you have 3 different phases, in my opinion, because each phase is going to have its snafus throughout the game. But as a defender, of course, I'm biased. As a defensive player, I'm biased.
Right.
Our job is to keep the other team out of the end zone, no matter what the circumstances are. And in the second half, Patrick Mahomes had 4 possessions and scored on all 4.
Yeah. I hear you.
And we had no answer for him, no matter what the circumstances are, So, and listen, I'm not here to point a finger and say whose fault it was and whose it wasn't, but I think that, it's an issue. When you talk about the biggest game on the biggest stage, we have to talk about it.
I'm saying,
and how that translates to this year.
I get your perspective, and that's why you were a great player. You're like, all right, we're going to stop him at the 5-yard line. But if I'm a coach, I'm not blaming that on my defense. I'm blaming it on my special teams.
I got you.
I got you,
but you can't get beat by the same play twice in a row in 3 minutes.
I want to go back to something you said a little while ago about their philosophy of they're willing to give up the 4, 5, 6 yard run and negate the explosive plays. I agree with you 100% that's what I expect to see, especially when you're integrating so many new pieces to a scheme until you find out what the identity of your defense is. The problem with that is that means every other carry, the opposition's getting a first down, which means your explosive offense is standing on the field, which makes that game that much closer in the fourth quarter. That's the aspect I don't like about it. No. But I agree with you 100% that's what I expect to see.
But that's what you saw in the Super Bowl. The Chiefs got nothing going in the first half, and they came out with a concerted effort to run the football. And the problem with when you run the football that way, you're converting first down and you're keeping possessions alive. But it also opens up the rest of your playbook, because when that quarterback sticks the ball out, the linebackers have to honor it, the safety has to honor it. Everybody's got to stop. Your rush, your pass rush slows down. But if you can take away that run aspect, or at least control it, now you put the offense in a position where all you have is a pass game. Now we can turn our dogs loose, because that's what we actually do best.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, looks like Justin Evans is going to be starting over Terrell Edmonds today.
That's my I assume that would be the case. And,
John McMullen, now I heard your prediction earlier in the week during Birds 365 where I was lucky enough
was it?
to fit it. I was just going to say it was dangerously close to mine, so I'm curious if you're still on that same point.
I said I think it's going to be similar to last year. I think it's going to be more difficult than people expect. Week 1 in Detroit, people are like, it's the Lions. We're going to beat the Lions. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
And they did for a half.
Yeah.
And then they weren't, not so much. Yeah.
You know, ironically, I think the Lions have more talent than the Patriots, but they kept it close last year. Eagles were able to persevere. I think the same thing's going to happen this year. They're just going to out-talent New England. Very small margin of error. What Seth and D. Gunn were talking about, look, if you can run the football at 3 yards in a cloud of dust like Washington did, think about the first loss, and be disciplined and stay in the game, you can shorten it and you can go steal a game. Can the Patriots do that? Probably not. The Eagles win, and I think I said 27-23. I'll stick to that.
But that's what Bill Belichick is going to want to do. You go back to that Monday Night Football, I think it was last year when they went up to Buffalo and ran the ball like damn near 50 times. Yeah. You know, it's not beyond Bill Belichick to say, okay, if we can run the ball with some consistency here, let's run it. Let's establish it.
By the way, I got bad news for you guys. The reason Justin Evans is starting because he's the best coverage safety.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was told.
Oh, boy.
So, again, it goes back to what I said. When Mike Tomlin lets go of certain people, the big question is why. Just like when everybody was salivating when the Eagles brought in Robert Quinn. And my people with the Bears told me, Robert Quinn is not what you think he is. And sure enough, he became more of a guy in the witness protection program last season than he did as a productive player. So people were also excited about Nicholas Morrow coming in here, who had 108 tackles. My question was, how many tackles was he making down the field instead of at the line of scrimmage? Sure enough, he not only loses a potential starting job, he gets cut.
All right, we have to let John go. John, thank you so much. Appreciate you stopping by.
We don't have to let him go.
Oh, no. He's got a whole thing going, man. We got more time? Look at that. You guys open it up right there.
I'm hog tying John from start to finish.
Fair enough. All right, so we have your prediction 27-23. When it comes to this Eagles offense, we talked a lot about the defense, what they could do, what you're expecting to see Bill O'Brien do against this Eagles defense. But when it comes to the offense and Brian Johnson and what they could do with all the weapons that are here at their disposal, how versatile and how dangerous is this Eagles offense going up against this Patriot defense?
I mean, the Eagles offense is ridiculous on paper. I mean, Bill Belichick's famous for taking somebody out of the game. That's sort of what he's famous. Sometimes he wants to take over the best player offensively. Sometimes he wants to bracket the second best player and put his best coverage guy on the first player, take the second guy out. You never know what he's going to do. He's a mad scientist. But I'm like, well, all right, so take away A.J., take away Devontae, go to Dallas Goedert. You can't take everybody away. And you even add DeAndre Swift to the passing game. I think he's going to have a big impact, not as a dump ball player, but actually running routes, whether it's a bubble screen, whether it's a wheel route. Jalen Hurts, to me, is not a dump-off quarterback. He's never going to dump the football off to the back, because his perspective is he can get more than that back can get. But as far as getting DeAndre Swift involved in the passing game, I think that's going to be important. Kenny Gainwell, you're going to see him as the feature back. I think that surprises people. And the offensive line, you've seen it in some of these early games. Boy, when you can't block, get ready. Week 2, Thursday night, 2 games. Minnesota can't block anybody.
Yeah.
They have great playmakers. But when you can't block, you can't play offense. The Eagles' offensive line, even with Cam Jurgens stepping in, is going to be at worst top 5 in the league.
Right.
And that the whole engine runs from that.
All right. Now, I really will say, John, we'll probably see you again in a second. We're bringing John back. We're bringing John back. We're going to bring John back. We're going to bring John back.
Sure.
Why not? We're going to be very liberal with our time with John. Thank goodness. Good to have him here on set. All right, we'll be back with the Eagles pregame show coming up in a second.